Hey, what's up? It's Tati, back with another review of Dark Side of the Ring, this time Season 4, Episode 5, The Junkyard Dog. Now, JYD was one of the most prominent black wrestlers that broke racial barriers, paving the way for other black wrestlers. Now, he was a iconic fan favorite from Mid-South Wrestling. However, before he joined Mid-South Wrestling, he did grow up in North Carolina. He was raised by his grandmother and mother. His father did abandon him. Now, they also showed his family home. It was a 2-roomed little house. And I'm not saying 2-bedroom. I mean 2-room house where they had a heater in the middle of the house that would heat up the whole house when it was cold. There was no bathroom. If you needed to use a bathroom, you either use a bucket or you go outside in the outhouse that was in the backyard. Now, despite him coming from humble beginnings, him having fame and a lot of financial success in the world of pro wrestling did not change him, and he was well liked by everyone. Prior to finding a lot of success in Mid-South Wrestling, Junkyard Dog did try out going to several different territories, and for most of them, he was not able to make it due to his race. Now, one thing that the episode does not talk about at all, for some surprising reason, is his time at Stampede Wrestling. Now, he did have some success there as well, over with Stu Hart. However, they don't talk about this, and I just found out to be a little strange. I felt like they played a lot on him being a black wrestler, not getting a lot of opportunities, and kind of made it seem like he only got opportunities at Mid-South Wrestling, which is partially true, but I do think he did have success at Stampede Wrestling, which they don't talk about. Now, once he has left Stampede, he has an opportunity to go to Mid-South Wrestling, and he was basically referred to by Ernie Ladd, who had gotten a chance to see how well Junkyard Dog can do. He spoke to Bill Watts about getting him signed, and Bill Watts didn't really care about what his race was, as long as it could make him some money, right? So now, Junkyard Dog, he tries out, and Bill is not really impressed with his skills in the ring, but he's very charismatic, and he has a really great look that he's looking for, and he felt like with his time, with also playing college football, that he can be able to mold him into a type of wrestler that people can really get behind, and this really, really worked. Now, on this episode, we do have interviews with Jake the Snake Roberts, Coco Beware. We also have Teddy Long. We have, let's see, who else was there? Ted DiBiase as well. Now, everyone has positive things to say about him, but this show wouldn't be Dark Side of the Ring if obviously dark times weren't ahead. So Bill Watts became the first promoter to have a black person as a top babyface. Now, Bill also considered Junkyard Dog to be as family, and they made each other a lot of money. Now, one of Junkyard Dog's most famous feuds were with Ted DiBiase. Ted was trained to make Junkyard Dog look good in his matches, and they had a lot of notable great matches together. Now, outside the ring, they rode together from different shows, and they also were really great friends, and Junkyard Dog was also Ted's best man at his wedding. Now, one of the most infamous feuds in wrestling was Junkyard Dog's feud with the Freebirds. And the Freebirds used to have that hair removal cream where they'll put it on your hair and your hair will fall out. Now, in this particular feud, the cream got into Junkyard Dog's eyes, and he was blind for quite some time. Now, during this time, the Freebirds were absolutely hated. Even after shows, they would have to be escorted by the police just to get to their damn cars or even to their hotels, because people loved Junkyard Dog so much that they hated the Freebirds for blinding him. Around this time, Junkyard Dog has a daughter, and he does this crazy promo where he talks about because of the free birds he's blind and all he can do is hold his daughter but he can't see her, and that angered the fans so much more. Now to end this feud, it was Junkyard Dog versus Michael Hayes in a dog collar match. Now prior to that, one night JYD was sitting next to the barricade and he has his glasses on, his eyes are covered, and he's acting like he can't see, and a fan comes behind him holding a gun a little bit past his face, pointing it towards the Freebirds in the ring. And he tells Junkyard Dog, "Don't worry, I got it." And in real life, JYD can see, but he doesn't want to break kayfabe either. So it's either he's going to act like he could miraculously can see and grab the gun from this guy's hand, or he's just going to act like he has no idea what's going on. And before he can even act on anything, the police officers ended up apprehending this guy for obviously pointing a gun at the Freebirds. And I just think it's absolutely insane how back in the days people used to take these stories so much to heart. Junkyard Dog was also referred to as the Black Hulk Hogan of Mid-South Wrestling. He was well loved by all the fans, and he would give back to his community. He would write letters to the fans and visit the kids' schools and provide donations wherever he was needed. Now, while he was loved by everyone, especially by fans, his relationship with his family and his daughter were strained due to him being on the road most days of the year. So he could not be a father when he needed to be, and he had his family members raising his daughter. Now, with all that stress of being on the road and not being able to be part of his daughter's life the way he wanted to be, he found himself getting into drugs. Now, he was doing a lot of speed and getting into all types of narcotics. And one person that he did a lot of experimenting on was with Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, you guys know Jake the Snake is no stranger when it comes to battling addiction, especially to drugs. He has been sober for quite some time, but during this time was when he would start getting into his drug use, and he was pretty light on drugs compared to Junkyard Dog at this time. And he was also, Junkyard Dog was also known for growing out his pinky nail so he can better do cocaine. Now, aside from doing drugs, another thing that he loved to do was sleep with women. So after the show, there would be women waiting in the parking lots, wanting to go meet up with wrestlers at the hotels to have sex with. And they would pay him $100 gladly just to sleep with him. So Tony Atlas used to ride with Junkyard Dog, and at times he would be in a hotel room with these girls. Now, one particular night, he met up with some women at the hotel. So it's Tony Atlas and Junkyard Dog with a couple of women in the room, and they didn't know this, but one of those women's husband busts through the doors, and he is mad as hell that his wife is in there. So he goes to go fight the Junkyard Dog, and I don't know if he knew who he was or whatever, but he got his ass whooped, and Junkyard Dog just turned around and just keep hammering his wife. I wonder how things ended up with them. But that's just something that he was into. He was making a lot of money. He was famous. And women back then would not have mind sleeping around with wrestlers. And I wonder if things like that happen these days, but probably not. Now, he used to make up to like $3,000 a week in Mid-South, and that's a lot of money, especially for a territory to give a wrestler. Unfortunately, he was using that money for drugs and sleeping around with ring rats and everything. But then Vinnie Mac got to him, and he knew he could not turn down all the zeros that Vinnie Mac was offering him. So it's 1984, and Vinnie Mac has snatched up Junkyard Dog. Now, people were very shocked and surprised by this. People didn't think that even though Vinnie Mac was sweeping through the territories, that they were going to end up to convince Junkyard Dog, who seemed to be loyal to Bill Watts, and especially Bill Watts giving him so much opportunity to become a star in Mid-South Wrestling. Now, Bill does go on camera after JYD leaves, and he is crying and he's upset, letting everyone know how hurt he is that Junkyard Dog has left. Now, Junkyard Dog spoke to Teddy Long years later, and Teddy Long says that the reason why Junkyard Dog decided to leave Mid-South Wrestling is one day he was in the bathroom and that son of a bitch pedophile Grizzly Smith comes in there with Bill Watts. And he tells Bill Watts that he thinks that JYD is going to sign with WWF. And what made Junkyard Dog leave Mid-South Wrestling was Bill Watts' response to Grizzly Smith. And what he said that he heard with his own ears that Bill Watts said was, "Don't worry, that nigger is not going anywhere." And that was what made him so angry that he decided to leave Mid-South Wrestling. Now, that's according to Teddy Long. Teddy said that that's what he told him. I don't think Teddy would lie about something like that. But if that was the case, I would be angry too and want to leave. Now, the Junkyard Dog's in WWF and enjoying the success. He does have fame and he does have a lot of money. And they even said that he was making 6 figures a quarter just on action figures alone. So people really, really love Junkyard Dog no matter where he went. Meanwhile, Bill Watts is trying to fill that void and he is hiring black wrestlers left and right, trying to make them basically a replacement of Junkyard Dog, but that falls flat. Years later, Mid-South Wrestling does turn into UWF. Now, here's the thing. Junkyard Dog, he knows that he's going to be making a lot of money and he believes that he's going to have a lot of fame. But what is a surprise to him is that while Bill Watts was able to take him and make him the top star, there was just no way in the WWF that he was going to get over Hulk Hogan. And not just Hulk, but there were some other guys at the top as well. But he was so used to being the guy that I guess he was surprised to see that that was just not going to happen in the WWF. Now, there was a huge difference with how he was treated in Mid-South versus WWF. And yes, the money is a huge, huge difference, but at least he felt better in Mid-South. And maybe at this point, he probably was debating with himself if it was worth it. With all them zeros, probably he thought it was. So JYD was definitely depressed about his fame in the WWF. He was definitely at the bigger promotion, but definitely not being treated like their top star. And that drove him to get more into his drug addiction. Now, he was doing a lot of weed at first, but then he turned to coke. And it got to the point where it didn't even matter where he was. He would stop to do coke anywhere. Now, at one point, one night, a limo came to pick up JYD and Coco Beware from the airport. They were supposed to go straight to the arena. Instead, he stops. He had the limo driver stops to get him crack. And then he does crack on the limo. And they were so late that they missed their match. Now, I do think that by this point, the WWF is catching on to his addiction. And that ultimately led to him being let go. Now, he even one time in Madison Square Garden went to the locker room and just loaded up a crack pipe and just did it in front of everyone in the locker room. And everyone was shocked that he would even do that so publicly. Yes, a lot of wrestlers were doing drugs, but to do this in Madison Square Garden in front of all these wrestlers, where any of the top backstage guys could have seen this and told Vince, that was absolutely insane. At that point, he just didn't care. Now, according to Jake the Snake Roberts, he says that the reason why WWF let him go was because he did not show up more than he actually showed up. So he no-showed too much and the WWF had to let him go. Now, he did try to make it in the indie scene for a while before going to WCW, where Bill Watts were also working. Now, I do think that they tried to work to get him to be one of the top guys, but at this point, he was way past his prime. And with him doing heavy drugs, that was another factor that kept him from performing the way he used to perform. So the last time Jake the Snake Roberts saw Junkyard Dog was in 1995. They were both performing at a indie show, and when he saw Junkyard Dog, He could barely speak. He couldn't even put any words together to make a sentence. Junkyard Dog ended up having about a 2-minute match, ended up collecting his money and leaving. Now, Ted DiBiase, who turns out to be a preacher, he spoke to Junkyard Dog not too long before he passed away, and Junkyard Dog had asked him to tell his story, tell people what he was like as a person and what demons he faced, and how to tell children not to end up to be like him. So that led Ted DiBiase to believe that perhaps he was ready to change his life, but unfortunately his life was cut off short. Now, he went from headlining the Superdome to working part-time at Walmart and getting any wrestling gigs that he could get in between time. Now, yes, he was making over six-figure in WWF. However, he was not good with saving his money, and he spent most of it on drugs and women and a lot of unnecessary things, and not having anything left for himself in the future. So the last time his family saw him was on June 1st. So he was living in Mississippi at the time, and his daughter was graduating high school, and he had to drive 9 hours to go to her graduation ceremony. Unfortunately, he did not make it in time, but he did attend the celebration the family was having for her after the ceremony. Later on that night, he goes to the gas station with his nephew, and his nephew realized that he had threw up in his car. And I guess he felt like Junkyard Dog was not feeling well enough to make that 9-hour drive, but he assured his nephew that he was able to make the drive. He does it all the time, and he ended up driving away. So he's going to spend the whole night driving 9 hours. Unfortunately, later on that morning, he ends up crashing his car due to falling asleep at the wheel, and he passed away at 45 years old. That is very, very young. Now, unfortunately, I do believe so many wrestlers, they get into this business, and a lot of them end up getting into drugs. Yes, he's getting into drugs. That probably was another reason why he could not sleep and ended up falling asleep at the wheel. But the thing is that they start off as like these heroes, and then later on they're met with these demons that they can't overcome. Now, one thing that Jake the Snake Roberts says that was alarming to me was that when he found out Junkyard Dog had passed away, he felt happy for him in a sense that he's the lucky one to get away from his demons. And for someone with addiction to say that, that is very, very alarming to say, because people can't escape their addiction. Some people, they can get help and overcome, while others have to die in order to overcome those demons. And unfortunately, Junkyard Dog was just another wrestler that fell into drug addiction. Now, I really did enjoy this episode. I just felt like even though there was racial barriers for Junkyard Dog, I don't think it was a barrier the entire time. Yes, there was, but I didn't want them to feel like they were like going with a narrative that he couldn't do anything in his career without Bill Watts. Now, Bill Watts was a huge influence to making him a star, but I do believe at some point someone was going to give him a chance, and he was going to be someone in this business. Now, I am a big believer of representation matters. Now, Junkyard Dog is a huge inspiration for many Black wrestlers or just athletes at all. You can see someone who looks like you and think that I can be like that too. He was someone very influential in this business, and he deserved a lot more, especially during his time in the WWF. He never won any championships there, and with there being a lot of star power in the WWF during that time, he wasn't able to achieve the highest that he could have possibly achieved while he was there. But he is loved and remembered by many fans and wrestlers that still talk about him today. Really enjoyed this episode. Next week, we got an episode on Adrian Adonis, and I think that's going to be a wild one. Guys, thanks so much for watching my review. I'll be back on Wednesday with Dynamite. Bye.